Past 9.
The Radio Wammo Breakfast.
Live from the New Scientist Labs, Janine Young, newscientist.com.
Yes, in Melbourne City, Janine Young is with us. G'day there, Janine.
Good morning.
And unfortunately, the material that we're talking about this morning, not at all positive, but should be talked about, and we can say it with a smile.
I got nothing positive for you this morning. It's all bad news or macabre, unfortunately.
Well, first up, yes, the macabre details of hangings have been revealed in the latest new science.
Yeah, this is the kind of thing that you sort of tend to shy away from, because when someone does take their own life, whether by design or whether by accident, it's not a pretty way to go. But there have been a bunch of researchers in the United States that have been looking at videos of people who wanted to document the last of their moments. Two of these were suicides. The other two were autoerotic asphyxiation, so people who try to restrict the amount of oxygen getting to their brain to increase their sexual pleasure. Again, not entirely something you necessarily want to get into, but, you know, these things happen in the world, and so you do have to take them seriously.
Yeah.
The videos that they were looking at were trying to sort out a bit of a conundrum that people have been wondering about since the 18th century. When you hang people, because for a long time that was a method of public execution, they often wanted to know whether or not it was airway compression, so crushing your trachea, for example, that was going to cut the oxygen off to your brain, because ultimately that's what causes death in the end. Whether or not it's obstruction of the blood vessels that get to your brain, or whether it's your vagus nerve that becomes trapped and you wind up having irregular heartbeats that leads to a cardiac arrest. In watching these videos, they were able to work out that people lost consciousness in about 8 seconds, which is not very long when you think about it. Then they go through a series of involuntary seizures and other movements, but they're still making breathing type noises, so they think that it's actually constriction of the blood vessels that's causing death.
Yeah.
There's no other nice way to put it, unfortunately. And this is not just for the sake of it. It does have implications for anyone who is potentially in incarceration, for example. They could be in jail, and it could be potentially levelled at some of the people that are looking after them, that there's negligence or that they were beaten before these people died. The involuntary seizures and the like, if their hands are flailing about or there's other issues here, then it's very possible that they inflicted this on themselves without actually even knowing, because frankly they were unconscious and this was involuntary.
Yeah.
So it has implications for justice, for who gets accused of making these things happen over time.
Yeah, so I mean, it's obviously terrible when it does happen, but I mean, I wouldn't want to be the one who studies this kind of stuff, because I imagine it's pretty horrific. But if people who are falsely accused, say prison guards, can be, have their mind put at rest that there are people looking at how this is done, so therefore how it happens, it's obviously positive.
Also, sometimes these things are accidents. I think we've heard about the case of, David Carradine and the like, who was doing stuff in a cupboard in a Bangkok hotel to increase his pleasure. But unfortunately, when people do that kind of thing, you are cutting oxygen off to your brain. Now, there's no safe way to do this, kids. Seriously, Auntie Nina's saying don't do it. And I don't say don't do it much in the world, but for this one, there's no safe way, because you are obstructing the blood vessels, you are cutting oxygen off to your brain. I know that's the point, but in this case it's so easy to lose the ability to then fix it. People have fail-safes and the like, but they don't work. You become disoriented, you start, you're lightheaded, you just don't have the control. And unfortunately these accidents happen. Estimates I was looking at yesterday, up to 1,000 people die in the United States each year from autoerotic asphyxiation. And they're pure accidents, and it's a tragic, tragic thing. So, as I said, it's a bit macabre, but, there's no safe way to do this. Don't do it.
No,
don't do it.
Don't do it.
For you.
Don't do it, Janine. Right, off to the environment now.
As I said, I don't say no very often.
Yeah, no, you don't. No, exactly. Off to the environment now, where things obviously aren't all that happy either. Into the Arctic ice we go, Janine.
Yes, the Arctic ice in 2007 hit the lowest amount that people had seen in forever. Again, not good news here. There was a combination of what they call the Arctic dipole anomaly. You have a whole bunch of weather and low and high pressure systems building up over the Beaufort Sea, which is off the coast of Canada, up in the Arctic Circle, combining with a low pressure trough in Siberia. Meant that you've got much warmer winds. It takes ice out towards the Atlantic, melts a lot more quickly. 2007 was a bad year. 2008, 2009 were better, and people were talking about potential recovery of the ice. And they're going, yay, things might be coming back. The answer is no. They think it very likely that this is not the case, and that you have a series of combinations of the fact that the ice, when it was functioning normally, the world doesn't seem to be functioning normally anymore, would actually have multiple year build-ups. So you'd have ice that could be up to 50 metres thick because it never quite went away during the summer or during the autumn, and then you'd have more ice forming across winter. It could get really thick. Apparently, about the thickest ice you're seeing these days is 3 metres thick, not 50. And that means that it's a lot easier to break up. You have, for example, large storms that come through. These waves are able to break massive ice blocks that are, the size of Manhattan down to 100 metres across in tiny pieces. And that's a bit concerning. But another issue is the fact that this ice is rotten at its core, at its heart. It has a bunch of thaw holes through it, means water can make its way through it. So when, again, you have a wave going past it, it breaks up a lot more easily. Things are not looking good up in the Arctic Circle, and this has massive implications for things like coastal erosion, for the fauna. And it's not just the polar bears. There's a whole bunch of other smaller, less cute, fluffy animals that will be impacted by this. It'll impact weather patterns. It has massive implications for what's going to happen in the Arctic Circle. And the news isn't good, unfortunately.
And with the sea level rises, it looks like that we can't actually reverse it through geoengineering.
No, again, no more good news here either. Researchers have been looking at whether or not you can combine geoengineering, so things like putting aerosols into the air, space mirrors, biofuels, all the things that are being suggested, seeing whether or not they can actually work with the idea of doing nothing with carbon dioxide, whether or not we put stringent cuts in, or, looking at the various options that we have in front of us. And they're finding that by the end of the century, none of these are going to make a difference unless we have stringent cuts to the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And it's coming down to that being the critical factor, because you can put sulfate aerosols into the air, which reduces the amount of sunlight hitting the Earth, but it is only going to delay an increase. You by the end of the century, you'll only keep it down to 0.8 of a metre as opposed to 1.1. You're delaying the inevitable. Right. Space mirrors, unfortunately, only work with strict cuts. Biofuels will be kept to 30 centimetres by the end of the century. Again, with strict cuts. Picking up a theme here, it seems that you can try and geoengineer all you like, but unfortunately you have this base issue of carbon dioxide levels in the first place. Unless you do something to address that, it's not going to make any difference.
Golly, well, that's glum. I guess I will. I'll stick to doing my compost then.
Look, the small things that you can do. I mean, you keep hearing about the fact that it's all about big polluters and all that, but I think everyone needs to make a contribution to this. So yes, you're composting and riding a bike and all the things that we know we need to do. Getting in and actually doing them and trying to get some kind of change through government. Oh, look, we all know what we need to do.
Yeah.
As I said, I've got no good news for anybody this morning, so I'm just going to smile and apologise and say goodbye.
Turn that frown upside down, Janine. We'll talk to you next week.
See you.
Janine Young is in Melbourne City and joining us from New Scientist magazine. Those stories you'll find in the magazine next week. Also, check out the website as well, newscientist.com.